Hello, future viewers! Welcome back to Lunar Chase, also known as X. Last time we introduced ourselves to the basic controls and an equally basic first mission, where it was just pick up a thing and deliver it to the other thing. But now we're going to see some direct aggression from our enemies in this game. Look at the detail on those legs. Isn't that the best you've ever seen? Well, I make fun of it, but once again, original Game Boy. It is a miracle that this game works as well as it does. You know, it's actually pretty interesting to take a look at how really old games were made and the limitations they were under. Like, Pitfall, for example, is just pure wizardry. That is some powerful black magic they used to get that game to run. If you're at all interested, I highly recommend looking that sort of thing up. There's plenty of YouTube videos on the subject. Or at least, enough. There are enough videos about that. Anyway, we start out within detection range of one of the time bombs, so let's deal with that. And I think this mission is a nice introduction on how to use missiles, because the required targets for said missiles are, well, they're stationary. Also, there's lots of these little hovering enemies that drop missiles on death, so you're in no danger of running out. Not on this mission, anyway. And, well, I have to say this kind of makes sense. A lot of the bombs are placed near objects of importance, like defense bases or the nuclear silo. It would be bad to let that one explode. Anyway. Yep. Stationary objects that don't hit back. Good way to learn how to use missiles. It's not complicated, but they are unwieldy on purpose. Which is, I actually kind of like that game design decision. Where your heavy weapons are not just for times when you need an easier fight, but for enemies that cannot be destroyed otherwise, and that's about it. Anyway, we're going to make a decent amount of use from the radio functions of those defense stations. I mean, it's not too surprising that they'd had the info. You saw those huge radar dishes on them. In fact, for a lot of the missions, the main function of these defense stages is... Did I say stages? The main function of these defense stations is to find what you have to pick up or shoot or otherwise interact with. Although a lot of the time it's shooting. Now, don't get me wrong, the lock-on feature is useful. I mean, circle strafing in a game that does not have any kind of strafe button is a pretty nice feature to have. But I do kind of wonder why you need to lock on to a target to fire a missile when the missile is, dumbfire. Like, as I said before, it is not guided in any way. Maybe, I don't know, maybe it's a military bureaucracy kind of thing to make sure that you're not going to fire the missile at anything you don't actually want to blow up with a missile. Also, speaking of blowing up things up with a missile, I blew up that normal enemy with a missile by accident. I was not showing off. I was just pressing the wrong button there. Anyway, let's find the next bomb. The time limit on this mission is very generous. And also, the enemies are more here to give you stuff than they are to actually get in your way. So once again, the difficulty has only ramped up a little bit. Now, even though I probably still haven't quite got the hang of those things yet, even though I could spend less real-time time on this mission just driving around on the surface, it's good to stay in practice for using tunnels. Dang it. Best piloting ever. It's good to stay in practice for using tunnels whenever they would serve as a shortcut, because that's a skill that we will need to use later on. Or, if not an absolute requirement, at least it makes things a lot easier. Also the music. Mostly the music. It's also worth mentioning that that junction thing in the center is an in-game object on the surface, so if you're near the middle of the map, you can use that and go to tunnel exits from there. And you can also leave the base, as the game said, in the middle of the map if that's where you want to go. You don't actually have to do 2 tunnel trips. And I wish we got a remix of that tunnel music. We only got a remix of the music we got at the start of the game. I wonder if they intended to use that music more often. Oh well. Also, I noticed that we are using the Metal Wolf Chaos method of preventing the bombs from exploding by blowing them up. This is actually less outlandish than it might sound, depending on the nature of the bomb. There's more than one kind of bomb that only works correctly if detonated in a very particular way. The only real question I have is why they gave these time bombs such a long time before exploding. From the alien point of view, I should say. From a video game point of view, it makes a lot of sense. By the way, you can hold backwards to move in reverse, and that's pretty useful against a lot of enemies. Especially the ones that like to ram you. But it's also useful to avoid the return fire of enemies that like to shoot you while firing back. Probably didn't have to bump into that one. Also, and this is going to happen a couple of times, I occasionally run afoul of my bad sense of direction. In particular, my tendency to confuse west and east. Like, right after fighting an enemy especially, I tend to sometimes go the wrong way. This also happens in other games that I play where sense of direction is important. Oh well, I guess I'll have to just get better at the skill as I go. Area 6, huh? Well, that definitely seems like, if I was going to play really optimal, or at least technically optimal, I would use a tunnel because that would put me right in the middle of where I need to go. So there it is. I'd like to emphasize, you don't actually have to use tunnels this much in Mission 2. It's just a habit that I like to keep using. Like, especially after playing later missions, checking the map and finding the fastest tunnel route becomes kind of automatic. That being said, in an actual speed run, I imagine you'd pretty much never use them because of the extra time involved. Like, going around in turbo mode in the surface would probably be faster in real time. Well, that and you'd memorize where most of the things showed up, which I have not done. Or at least I mostly haven't done. There's a couple of things that I remember. And these are things that are, in my defense, not easy to forget once you encounter them. Anyway, if these tunnel sequences look familiar to you, you may have gotten that experience from another game that had flying through tunnels every now and then. What game would that be? Oh, should I do the big reveal now? Let's save it for next time. And yeah, the game immediately ends whatever it is you're doing when the mission is complete. You don't get to pick up any power-ups right in front of you, so if you want to resupply, you have to do it in the next mission. Also, those stars. Those stars are used for the continue feature. If you, for example, lose a mission and then want to continue, or if you want to stop playing and then pick up the game later, both of those use the continue feature, which I think use 5 stars each time, or something like that. It might depend on which level you're going into, but anyway, that's their function. You don't actually have to play through this entire game in one sitting, even on the original hardware. I'm glad they thought of that. Because playing for that long on a Game Boy, I mean, it's a portable system, you have places to go. But anyway, humanoid tank is what they call this. Well, it's a good thing we kept our stock at as far as it would go. Well, you're always at least minus one missile at the start of this mission, but that's okay, because we start right in front of a supply base. Probably because we launch from one at the start of a mission. Now, I happen to know where at least the first tank shows up and where it goes at the start. Did I say the first tank? Oh yes, I did. And no, that's not really metagame spoilers. In the Japanese version, the game just tells you right away that 2 humanoid tanks have been detected on the way. There's actually a few differences, but in the Japanese version and this translation here. But that's the first big one. I'll see if I can point more out as we go. And this time the tunnel is very much warranted, because as the game told you, those humanoid tanks will just walk right over defense stations and blow them up. We want to prevent that, of course. And how many Game Boy games dealt with 3D space, anyway? Anyway, you heard that noise. There it is. Now, to deal with these humanoid tanks, you have to close in on them quite a bit to have a good shot. The good news is that the game is generous with the hitboxes. Now, we're not really sure where the other humanoid tank is. Oh, and hey, more missiles. There's actually quite a few enemies here. Well, by early game standards. And hey, we got almost all of our missiles back, which is nice. We technically had enough for both kills right at the start, but it's nice to have a little bit of room to make mistakes. Now, since we aren't really sure, well, since I'm not really sure where to go yet, I think the best place for a good response time is to go right to the middle of the map. So we're gonna do that. Also, although it was pretty clear to see, this is the stage that introduces you to the concept of missions where your support network is in danger and can get blown up. If the presence of 8 resupply stations seemed like a bit much, now you know why. We may have to wait until one of our stations gets blown up, because just wandering around is unlikely to lead us to where the enemy is. In retrospect, I probably should have just gone to the opposite corner of the map of where I beat the first tank. That's where I would put the second one, going by video game design rules. Things would be too easy if the 2 tanks were too close together. And I just kind of realized that and started heading in that direction while playing as well. By the way, restocking fuel is really easy. I tend not to worry too much about that, or using turbo. Oh, this is a new enemy. This is the heavy enemy hover tank. it turns into a smaller hover tank when you beat it. Oh hey! Well, I discovered the enemy just a little bit too late. There you are. Well, that's awkward. I probably should have done some circle strafing around that thing to avoid the obstacle, but never mind. Also, I could have aligned myself a little bit better behind that that humanoid tank to get... well, to rely a little bit less on the generous hitboxes, let's say that. Also, lots of large stars from that one. Not bad. I would be interested in a version of this game where defense stations were not rebuilt between missions, or at least rebuilt at a slower pace than all of them. Like maybe one per mission, or maybe if your tank's shields were also not completely restocked between missions or something. It'd be fun to have kind of a hard mode for this game. These seem less like bases and more like tool sheds or something. Alright, we'll just take it on faith that blowing up the building that our scientist is in will cause no problems. These actually are a problem. I'll discuss how they work as we go in the mission. Now, as the commander said, there are many bases all over the place, or at least while you're traveling they spawn all over the place. But I find it's better to follow the radio links, even though you'll run into bases just from going any old direction, because a whole lot of them are decoys. Including the first, at least the first few that you find by that radio intelligence, but I'm actually not entirely sure how those things work. It may be that going to one in a particular location will always give you your mission goal. I have to admit, I haven't played this particular mission a whole lot. But anyway, let's follow directions for now. I don't think that the tunnels themselves change a whole lot between missions, which, yes, they make sense. I mean, these are our tunnels. Why would we intentionally make them more difficult to navigate as we went? But at the same time, going through the same tunnels every time gets a little bit samey. Maybe they could use the excuse of aliens have infiltrated it and added obstacles or something. And yep, here we go. Now that's actually not quite the direction I was thinking of going. But I guess we might as well follow the arrow while we're here. And yep, those lines right there, those are enemy fire. It's, well, simple graphics even by this game's standards, but as long as they convey the correct idea, I guess it's fine. And, yep. That's generally the sort of thing that's in the wrong, or I should say decoy bases. Hey, stop fooling around. Anyway, we found the thing that we were looking for this time. Nope. And this is a new enemy too. These spiders can only be killed by missiles, and if they're left to walk around a little bit, they will shoot at you, much like other enemies do. Except this one is right in front of you, because you're supposed to fire those rockets from pretty close by. There's a couple of other traps as well. But we're not going to worry about that right this second. Also, it looked like I just bumped into empty space, didn't it? Those arches are a little bit weird. They're designed to look like you're going right in between them no matter which direction you came from. That's why I think the collision is a little bit odd. And yeah, this mission is kinda long. And as I said, I'd love to learn more about how these alien bases work, like whether it was based on random chance or what. Because while practicing, I went around destroying bases all over the place, but didn't find the right one until I ran out of... Well, I didn't find the right one at all, and I ran out of time. And that's what happens when you drive right by a landmine without being careful about it. You see, landmines, they're not the sort of thing that damage you when you run them over. They're the sort of things that shoot missiles at you if you move quickly while being within detection range. Usually, the game warns you when mines are detected, but when you're running around a turbo like this without paying attention to the radar at all, you can trigger them accidentally. And if you do that, you better keep running because they're missiles. They will deal a lot of damage to you. It's, as the game says, better to just be a little bit more cautious and shoot them. Aren't I in Area 2 right now? No, wait, no. It starts with 0. It starts with 0. So I guess I can just go through the corner and head to Area 2 that way. It would probably consume less in-game time to use a tunnel, but we've used plenty of tunnels. Also, I was supposed to go west, not east. The dangers of using turbo all over the place, my friends. Don't do what I did. Well... anyway. Now that was odd. It looked like that missile just went right through the enemy. That's something I haven't really seen before. Anyway, let's talk a little bit more about Lunar Chase hard mode for a second. Aside from more permanent damage to your support network, I wonder what else they could add. It would probably have to do with the mission objectives. Or at least some of it would have to. But also maybe less than a full restock in the central junction, like maybe restoring 4 missiles instead of everything. Well, that's unfortunate. But we still got some time, we don't have to worry about it. You know, the first time I played this, I actually found the scientist with the second alien base I found. And that more than anything makes me think that there's at least some random chance involved. Well, either that or I just lucked out and hit the correct one right away. I don't know. People more experienced with the game, let me know. Yep, we got our scientist. Now, one of the other traps is not actually an enemy. Well, not like the kind you shoot. There is actually a possible event where you find an imposter scientist who looks kind of different from the scientist you rescue, but like kind of a cheesy disguise, and he just says thanks. And if you take him to the nuclear silo, you see this kind of weird glitched out sequence instead of the normal power crystal sequence, and the game tells you, hey, that guy was an imposter. Fortunately, that doesn't cause the silo to blow up or anything, but it does cost you some time. I thought that was an interesting feature, and it's actually kind of a shame that I didn't get to show it off here. But I just wanted to let you know that it is a thing in this game. Yeah, the aliens saw that one coming. Also, this is where I found out that pressing the start button instead of the A button just ejects you from the center base. Once again, best piloting ever. Oh, you may have noted that when I was talking about hard mode, I wasn't necessarily talking about increasing enemy durability or whatever. Maybe making them more aggressive would be good. Like, there's certain enemies that try to ram you a lot more often than they try to shoot you, and having them fire more often might be okay. And by the way, we never really did get to shoot mines in this run, did we? It's worth mentioning that when you do spot mines and shoot them, they turn into an enemy. So you're not quite getting away with it for free when you do that. Actually, I think for speedrun purposes, it would be faster to just keep going and dodge the missiles, which is not necessarily easy. Anyway, we've finished the mission. Hooray! And I think that's enough for now. My plan is to do 3 missions per video. We actually went through a couple of the longer ones here, which is not to say that the shorter ones are easier. No, no. But I'll show you what I mean when we get there. Later!